these are the interns that are coming up. We have people here with multiple careers. They're bridging. We have several nurses or other people in the medical field. We have teachers who are also nurses. So it's going to be an interesting bridging. We have pastors who are writers and artists. It's going to be fun. The first person up is Shanice Allen, and she will be followed by Leanne Aris Henry. After those two women, young women, are finished, we will hear from Terrence Bob. Okay, let's welcome them.
Hello. Okay. This year, as an intern of the summer workshop series of GCA, I certainly had some real challenges. However, it was worth it. When I found out that I was assigned and appointed to be an intern for the second time, I was mutually astonished. In retrospect, the first year I didn't know exactly what to do, but guidance from Dr. Emanuel, I started to master the art of communication with the kids, the parents, and instructors. As time progressed, I grew up, I learned, and it made me a better person. I'm not going to lie, kids aren't easy to deal with, but as you work with them, they listen and start to learn. At GCA Summer Workshop Series, it is not only about having fun and playing games, running all over the place, but it's also about learning, writing, and it has a strong literary concepts and finding out and exploring new ideas. When I realized that I passed through the same process a few years ago, when I was enrolled in the same camp and realizing I was once sitting in those same seats they are now sitting. It appears to be boring since I did not see camp the way I see it now. However, I now could see the positives now that I'm older and grown. Today I can safely say it was worth it. Being a counselor in training is definitely not hard, but it's also not easy. I learned songs, events, that occurred in Guyana, such as Masquerade. There are many things that the camp teaches us. GCA helped me learn a lot, not just for kids, but things that are of culture, nature, and also the country, Guyana, where my mom was born.
Hello. Okay. The Guyana Cultural Association of New York has certainly brought a lot of opportunities for me, not only at school, but also in my life. GCA afforded me both the opportunities and the responsibilities of being able to work with children of a certain age group, understanding their youthful mindset, and adapting to the world that they occupy and live in. What makes my association with the student campers so challenging is their diversity and ethnicity mix. The makeup consists of persons from a wide cross-section of the community. What is visible is the camaraderie and the clannish mix, which extends to a coming together and general mix and mingle with the other cultures present. It is evident that the union and unity exhibited at the camp goes beyond friendship and may continue into a future lasting relationships. This is signaled by camp association with the exchange of phone numbers and joining in duet performances. For some time now, I have decided to take up a career either as a teacher or as a pediatrician. I could not ask for more. Here it is, my parents made sure I attended the summer workshop series a few years ago. Now I have graduated and was chosen as a counselor in training, or as everyone calls us, interns. This experience helped me to shape into that mold where I am now receiving the necessary tools and basics necessary to fulfill the career I intend to pursue. My presence at the camp allows me to mix and mingle with children of varying ages and to interact with them. This golden experience has prepared the stage and I am confident that with the summer series mode, the sky is the limit, and I intend to proceed aggressively to achieve my goals. I have observed that it is kind of hard to grab the attention of children because of their attention span, and you have to repeat yourself several times for them to realize what you are saying is important. I love to sing and dance. Another positive derive stems from my dancing at the camp, which propelled me to travel to Turkey to sing in a competition and the opportunity to dance at the International Day of Friendship at Borough Hall and the Folk Feet in the Street in Brooklyn representing Guyanese culture. In both events, we danced in the street performing Guyanese dances and in particular masquerade. The most important positive that I learned was that in order to lead in a precise direction, one need to lay by example. In the summer workshop series, I had to do that in order to show the children the correct things to do, hoping that they would follow. Working with the children was really fun for me, and it definitely made me understand that later on in life, I will not regret the experience I gained.
Now, they have been reading from a particular journal. So will one of you please explain what that journal is about? And while you're in there,
Okay.
hold it up so we can see.
So this is the magazine that they sell and they give out every year. And they're inside, they just tell you all the things that are like happening with the culture and what the association is doing. And you can see advertisements, or you can read about culture, or there might be a nice article inside.
And she's holding up the masquerade page, and the masquerade people have just come in from Guyana. They landed about 7 this morning, and they'll be here momentarily to show you what real masquerade looks like. They just came back from Haiti, Carrie Preston number 12. And how much is that nice little magazine?
It's $4.95.
$4.95? $5, and we keep the 5 cents. Thank you very much, ladies. And if you have any questions for them, please feel free to ask. We are now going to hear from Mr. Terrence Bob. Remember last year, he was the gentleman who told us you need an eraser if you want to be a good writer. Go ahead, Terrence. You have to take it. Remember, Terrence also has his own YouTube channel. Am I saying it right?
Alright, well hello people, my name is Terrence Bob and I'm going to be reading a story called Bad Boy, Good Boy, named Johnny Old Boy. This is the story of how the dirty, young, greedy, naughty, not so good, mean, bad boy became a good, nice, thankful man of the world, or a boy named Johnny Old Boy, a boy who was very mean, stealing stuff, not saying please, very greedy, saying bad words and doing bad things, drinking, being very strict, not being a good person. He did not listen, was not paying attention, not following the rules, and was doing anything that a bad person like him would do anyway. At that time he did it since he was very young. Fighting, bullying, slapping, pushing, punching, distracting, and things like that. He wasn't listening to his parents or teachers, was being very rude, didn't care about anything, acting crazy, throwing things, getting very upset, angry, disappointed, and mad, and would sneak out of his house. He was very bad in school, got minuses, C's, D's, and F's, would refuse to stop his bad habits, do things privately, and he would get caught by his parents. He did inappropriate things, would not give people space, etc. All the things he would do and how he was described, he was always like that, and he would say like that forever. There was a lot of bad moments between him and his family, but there was a lot of emotional ones as well. He would cry a lot because of his ways and how he would be with his family. A lot of his family members passed away, and even his parents were crying because he would never change. One time when Johnny was 8 or 9 years old, he was kicked out of school and was suspended for 5 months. As of then, his parents were very disappointed and were talking to him. Johnny's dad said, "Johnny, what happened to you?" When you were very young, you were nice, but now you are mean and bad. We need you to change. Seriously, we are begging." But then Johnny said, "What's the point anyway?" Johnny's dad became very angry, and Johnny slapped him really hard in the face and started shouting at him. He then went to his room. Johnny's parents were really upset. When Johnny went to his room, he remembered locking the door, crying and saying to himself, "What am I going to do?" What made him cry the most was because he saw a lot of good friends and people. It was sad, and it made him cry because of it made him see the difference between good people and bad people. It made him cry so much that it made him feel like a failure. Living a bad life and being very negative was painful for him and very hard. With his family members that passed away and left him, there are pictures of him either being sad or just not being there. It was hard for him. He always wanted to be alone and being in a place where nobody was around him. He always had thought of just running away into a faraway place and being gone forever. It was really sad, and it had been going on for a really long time. There was nothing he or anyone else could do about it. Then there was one day that changed Johnny forever, and it was something that he would never forget. It was the day that he snuck out of his family's house in order to do whatever he wanted in his own mood. Suddenly, after hopping through rooftops, climbing through ladders and edges, running, jumping, sprinting, walking through sidewalks and floors, and going through whatever came his way, he came to this town called Satin Town, aka Bad Town, a town where there were full of homeless and poor people, as well as gangs and full of bad people as well. It was an emotional place where people were crying, bullying, and they were suffering drugs, alcohol, etc. It was a bad place to be. When Johnny got there, he was not scared. But when he saw it the real way, he got frightened. He started walking through the streets. The boys in the gangs started looking at him, laughing at him, and making fun of him. He tried to act tough, but the gangs and others around him were too scary for him. He tried fitting in and making fun of others around the town, but they were too scary for him, made fun of him, and bullied him. He started to cry and did not know what to do. He was scared until a man came to him saying, "Are you okay?" And Johnny said, "No, I'm not," and started telling him the reason why. After that, the man wanted to introduce him to a calm, nice way. He then spoke to Johnny and wanted to know more about him. But Johnny was too scared and upset. The man then said, "Hey, I know why you are scared, but I have something that will make you feel better." The man gave him 3 things: $1, water, a sandwich, and a candy bar, and a mini teddy bear. Johnny then smiled and wanted to tell the man more about his life. There were lots of things he said about his bad life. The man then replied, "Hey, I felt like that too. I remember looking at myself. I should change." I then gave my parents a big hug and focused on the good side. I think you should too. The man then asked Johnny the question, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Johnny then said a rapper, a breakdancer, and an author. Johnny then looked at himself and said, "I should change." Johnny then gave the man a big hug and thanked him. He broke into tears. The man took Johnny back home, and he went to his parents and gave them a big hug finally and told them that he wanted to be good. His parents were proud of him. Now Johnny, 20 years later, is a good person, getting good grades and doing good things. He is a good boy. Everyone should be good in the world. That is what we need to be. The end.
Do we have any questions to these 3 young people?
I guess the quick question is, how is it he was in fact inspired to do this? Why is it he actually said what he said? And was there any particular experience that he had that influenced? I guess so.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, I know.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate you for what you actually did. You stood in front of an audience and you said a number of different things. And what you did basically was to create a certain amount of knowledge, with certain ideas that you had, and certain
Yeah.
experiences, and then you expressed those experiences in words, not music or dance, but in words. What inspired you to do that?
A lot of my imagination. So I have a really good imagination. I had that since I was very young, and I loved it a lot. Really, like actually a lot. A lot. I actually enjoyed using my imagination, and I loved everything, and I always had passion of drawing and writing and doing stuff that I usually would love to do. So that I love that actually. That's my passion, and I love it when I create things, and I always had a dream of creating my own books and usually doing things that I do want to do. It's really explore the world of creativity and imagination.
Deep. Imagination, words, thinking, creativity. Deep.
Both been attended camp and basically shared your experiences with us. You shared your experiences with us. The question is, like the gentleman asked before, what inspired you to, first of all, get to the camp, and why is it you wanted to stay there?
So, what inspired me to come help out at the GCA camp was that when I grow up, I want to be a pediatrician or a doctor for children, or I want to be a school teacher. So it involves a lot of children, and you have to know how to work with them. You have to know how to get their attention and stuff. So this is preparing me for the job that I want to have.
Well, what inspired me into becoming a part of the summer workshop, well, I really like taking care of kids. I have younger sisters, and I have another brother coming on the way, and I just love taking care, because when I was younger I used to take care of my cousins and stuff, so it really teached me, and then me working and being an intern, it made me even better at taking care of kids.
How do you plan to use this?
Well, when I grow up,
You thought about it, I'm just throwing this out there.
I really don't know how it will help me, because when I grow up, I want to be a doctor. So I would be taking care of people, not really kids, but I just love taking care of kids.
Thank you. As I explained to someone, the literary hang is very laid back, informal. And I'm going to ask the pastor in our midst to bless these children as they prepare to go off on their new school year. Okay? They're doing wonderful things in Jerry Everly. They travel a lot. One has just come back from Spain, Portugal, and Morocco. And she came right into the camp, and then a few days later, she went up to Bear Mountain area somewhere, doing something with books. So they're doing things. So I'm going to ask our pastor, because our priest has taken the day, she's traveling on a family emergency, to bless all the children in the group. Come on, all the children.
Okay, kids, would you all stand?
As they prepare
Now,
for the
even before I give you that blessing, I'd like to give you a word of encouragement. The little guy, what's your name? Terrence. When Terrence spoke, he spoke about several talents that he has. There's a term that you use when you're doing math, congruence. It means that several things can equal the same thing. And it explains in life planning that you have several talents, but all those talents are elements that will define who you are. You like writing, you like drawing, but you put them all together, they define who you are and how you will express yourself in life. This whole of life is based on expressing yourself. God will give you a lot of opportunities to express yourself. Don't hold back. Don't hold back. You may do it artistically, you may not do it artistically, you may do it in a spiritual way, but whatever opportunity you have to express yourself, know one thing. Whenever you express yourself, somebody receives what you say, and that person will be blessed. In other words, that person will be inspired to live their life better. Okay? So I want to encourage you. Keep on doing what you're doing. Develop the things that you have not yet touched on. Once you know you're feeling it, man, do it. It's a gift you have. Nobody would like to know they have a gift that they're not using it. Because the gifts that we have bless us tremendously. And it gives us the comfort we need to survive in circumstances that life will throw at us. So be encouraged. As you go along, keep on doing what you're doing, and the more you do it, the better you'll become. Okay? Let me give you first of all a round of applause. Father God, in the name of Jesus, thank you for kids. You've given us children, oh God, because they are going to keep your name and your memory in this world long after we would have passed on. You've given us kids, oh God, and you ask that we raise them for you. Because when we're raising children for you, we're exposing them to the wisdom they need to conquer the circumstances of this world. We're exposing them, oh God, to the power they have within, that you bless them with, that Spirit, that Holy Spirit, that defies all odds to be victorious. And so, God, we're covering them right now with the blood of the Lamb. That blood, that Lamb that was shed to wash us and to make us pure and clean and holy in your presence, in your sight. We are covering them from all evil, from all pains, from all misfortunes, from anything, oh God, that will interfere with their progress and their success in life. Father God, we are blessing them right now, oh God, with discernment. May they see what's ahead of them. May they understand what they're seeing. And may they hear your soft voice as it speaks to them, empowering them to be true overcomers in this life. As they go back to school, oh God, protect them from danger seen and unseen. As they go back to school, oh God, you be a voice talking in them, talking for them, talking with them, talking through them, so that when they open their mouths, all those who are privileged to hear them will be blessed. Father God, bless them, oh God, with pure thoughts, so that they will produce pure actions. Bless them, oh God, in ways that are beyond their imaginations. Your word says that no eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind can conceive of the wonderful things that you have for those who love you. Father God, teach them to love you, so they can be remarkable human beings in this worldly experience. We bless them now, oh God, for success. We bless them for progress. We bless them for victory. In Jesus' name, and all of God's children say, Amen. 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 Amen.
Okay, we well ahead of schedule because the first person in the adult section is ill right now. I have that on good authority. So we will reconvene at 12:30 because I need to...
Good afternoon, and it is wonderful to be here. I apologize for having to interrupt and walk in on a presentation, but as you can imagine, it's an exciting visit. We have meetings with different groups of Guyanese, and we're just trying to meet as many people as possible. I think this is such a fantastic initiative. And I'm sitting there looking at some of the new publications, which, of course, we in Guyana, quite a few of them don't even realize that they've been done. And for me personally, one of the things that I've worried about over the last 5 years or so is the fact that I think that we as a people are not writing enough about our experiences, about our history, about what has happened in Guyana over, from independence to now. Next year we celebrate 50 years. So I really would like everybody here to applaud these fabulous authors that I see here. I'm hoping to purchase a couple. I say to you, well done, well done. We have to document. We have to express. And there's nothing like reading a good book. And unfortunately, I'm showing my age, but I still like to have the physical book. And you know in Guyana in the rainy season when, as they would say, the rain pelting down on the zinc sheet, you sit there with a book and you reading, you can't pass that experience for anything. So I want to urge all of you here that please, if you don't know Mr. Austin in Guyana, I would be happy to speak with you tomorrow and to assist in whatever way I can to ensure that your novels get into Guyana. I'm excited that we have increased traffic into Guyana. Fly Jamaica, I endorse them. They have been a good supporter. And certainly if we have more and more people coming to Guyana, more and more people coming next year. And therefore I'd like to see these works of art in our bookstores so that we can actually ensure that as a diaspora population and as Guyanese, we are reading and informing ourselves more. We actually are working on a program. The current Minister of Education, Rupert Roopnaraine, is very, very committed to improving the levels of reading, especially within our school system. So I encourage everybody here to make sure that you have a connection, and I'm going to be there all tomorrow. So certainly let's look out for each other and see how we can help each other to achieve that goal. I'm excited that next year we celebrate 50 long years. 50 years full of achievements in many respects, but in another area, 50 years of some disappointments and things that we need to look at, stop, assess, and work out how we're going to achieve in the areas that we might have fallen down in as a people. So we don't have a finalized program. We are going to be creating a very interactive website that will have all this information. 2 days ago, I was speaking to Caribbean Airlines about reducing their fares, becoming more competitive. I'm aware of that challenge, and more or less saying to them that we are going to have a big year next year. We want to have Guyanese returning home throughout the entire year, and therefore the airlines have to be on board. We're actually speaking to 2 new, very reputable airlines that I'm hoping we can conclude agreements with over the next couple of months so that we can really have some competitive prices when it comes to travel to Guyana. So it's my pleasure to be here. As I said, unfortunately, I need to dash out in a couple of minutes, but I know I'm looking forward to tomorrow, having the entire day to be able to interact and to speak with you on a more individual and personalized basis. So thanks for having us, and thanks for having this wonderful literary activity. And I think the plan is that next year we're going to be doing this on a larger scale in Guyana as an important part of our 50th anniversary celebrations. Thank you very much, everyone.
It's a pleasure to meet you. However, we are from Atlanta, Georgia, and a number of us are from from Atlanta, and we have great difficulties to get to Guyana. And so in doing so, we were fortunate to have had Delta, which was a direct flight. But I know in your discussion, please include Atlanta, because we do a medical mission, and there are several of us that goes to Guyana from Atlanta every year, twice a year. I've gone 3 times thus far and going in the next 2 weeks. But we either have to go to Miami
Or New York.
to connect, or come to
New York.
New York to connect, and it's roughly $1,000.
Yeah.
And when we have 17 or 21 of us, it's usually
Serious.
a problem.
Yes. Can I respond? I hear and I understand your pain. I don't want to get myself into trouble, but I want to reassure you that one of the 3 carriers we're speaking to covers the entire USA. So rest assured that you would be, if we're successful, you would be able to have really good interconnection all the way to Guyana. Delta was a huge loss, a huge blow. And I think, in fact, I don't want to get into the trouble and the politics, but I worry from a tourism, and at that point I was in the private sector, I worry that we didn't do enough to deal with the issues affecting Delta, and I hope that we can get some new carriers on board and work to maintain them. Thank you very much.
And before you run off, would you please leave all of your contact information with a GCA representative like Dr. Cambridge at the back?
Yes.
Because the crowd tomorrow is going to be very great, and writers are shy. They will not approach you. Okay? All right, so do that. And may I this time also introduce 1, 2, 3 members of our parish, our senior warden, Joy Park. She's in there very quietly. She's responsible for us having the building. Next, the chair of Buildings and Grounds, Larry Bigford, and he was here helping us set up. And next, vestry member, she's right here, Susan McHenry. And this is our Minister of Tourism. Thank you. Ingrid Griffith is coming up next, and you can see we're beginning to speed up a bit. And after Ingrid is Ruben Freeman. And with Ruben, I'm going to ask one of the young persons who was a little late this morning, not her fault, the traffic was bad, and that's Tiffany Herod, to make her appearance at that time. I have to pull you together, okay?
This is for you. Someone said, don't pass it on.
The most fun and entertaining positive of the camp for me is dance. When I am able to teach the kids new dance moves and watch them execute them, it is incredible. I get a feeling that the kids are listening and looking at me for guidance. Seeing the kids progress with the dance moves each time they practice shows that the other interns, dance instructors, and I have done something right. Additionally, the other interns and I have had an opportunity to showcase our dance moves for Masquerade this year at the Folk Feet and the International Day of Friendship. I am able to share my culture and what I have learned through dance moves. The final show is the most important and best positive for working at the camp. The day of the final show is exciting to see the children so ecstatic to showcase all the things they have learned throughout the 6 weeks. It is a bittersweet moment for me because it is the last day and I won't see them each week. However, I am happy to say that I've worked with them and provided a learning experience for them. To conclude, I enjoy coming to the camp each year because every child is different, and that means new surprises. It has been great to be able to share my experiences with the children, to teach the kids new dance moves, and it opened my eyes on how to be patient. Thank you.
I'm ready, Brenda. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Angela Messiah, and I want to share with you a little excerpt from my book, which unpublished, supposed to be published by the spring of next year, spring of 2016. I know everybody was talking about a lot of the, we've been coming from the idiomatic section of Guyana, the Creole, the language, and so on, but this takes us back to our roots, who we are as British Guyanese. And this particular book, I have to thank a lot of people who helped me put bits and pieces together, including my colleague and friend Brenda Richards, and one of my colleagues at work, Maria. I'd like to say thank you to her, and many others. They will be mentioned from time to time. But I'm starting this concept about this book. This book came about because of a Peace Corps volunteer. This is 1969. This is a Peace Corps volunteer who came to Guyana at that time. And this little girl who is going to be tracing this story, the book is an investigation by an upper-class 12-year-old girl in Guyana who could not understand why this 22-year-old Peace Corps American was perplexed at the easy mixing and interracial ethnic bonding in their communities. Neither could she understand why no one looked up to him because of his paleness. She only understood what was happening in that particular time in space in 1969 when she migrated to the US in 1982 and witnessed the width and depth of the ideological racism which he had experienced and couldn't understand why this was not so throughout the entire world. Caribbean blacks have been lucky in that sense because we largely escaped the psychological damage of this ideological racism that impacted and devastated the black population in America. This book is called The Black Paradox. And the Black Paradox I've borrowed from the erudite scholar and prestigious cultural icon, Rex Nettleford. When I attended an event that he was speaking at, he said to me that he was telling the audience that while he was living in England, they were saying all kinds of things about black people, how they were inferior and they couldn't do this and couldn't do that, whereas there were a whole cohort of West Indian scholars who had just left the Caribbean to attend Oxford and Cambridge universities. So this paradox that they were experiencing, on one hand, you're hearing in the communities and through racist and bigoted politicians that black people were inferior, they can't do this, they can't be promoted, and so on and so forth, and yet they were living this life of the scholarly life of high achievement and so on and so forth. And so this brings me back to the character Jack Forrest, who came to Guyana in 1969. His confusion came about because at that time, 1969, my sister, who was attending multicultural high school, Catholic high school, they used to have these after-lunch limes every Saturday. The neighborhood we lived in was a very mixed, what we call upper middle class neighborhood that hosted a lot of expats. Expatriates that come to the country. Most of them used to be a Caucasian. We had the British, we had Canadians, Americans. They all come in, they serve, and they leave. But this particular guy, this American, when he moved into the neighborhood, on that particular Saturday that we were having this after lunch lime, as they call it, with a whole host of different people. You're going to school, you have Chinese. It's a rare representation of the amount of people we had in Guyana. The Chinese, the Indians, Portuguese, a real representation. So he's watching this from across the street where he lives. and decided that he has to come over and investigate what was going on. And that he did. And his first question when he got into the door was, how is it possible that all of you can get along together? What is happening? How do all of you get along together? And is there a problem without any problems? You seem so harmonious. And the one question everybody said was, we were all friends. And it seems like this was not a satisfactory answer for him. He couldn't get past their skin color. And he kept asking, but there's not you different skin colors. You have these different skin colors. You're Indian, you're Portuguese, you're different. How is it you're getting along so well? And the only answer he got at the time was, we are all friends. And so this is young Sydney, the young woman who is going to trace the whole milieu, trace the whole history of where he's coming from, traced his life when she finally moved to the United States in 1982 and began to become familiar with what was happening in the American society. So this is where the story comes together. It starts with 1969, with this Peace Corps volunteer having this difficulty trying to find out what was going on in Guyana at the time, and she moving to the U.S. and investigating the environment in which he grew up and the imitation of life that all came together. So that's where the story is. And of course, after she did all this investigation and found out what was troubling him about the mixture, the easy mixing in Guyana at the time, she obviously sat out to find him. And that she was able to do by just Googling, and the first time she puts his name in the Google bar, it came up, and the top of it, there were like 6 people with the same name, but the top of his page has Peace Corps volunteer served in Guyana in 1969. And so she pursued him, presented her case to him, and the book is about that part of that conversation that took place between them, in which he admitted that, yes, indeed, he was troubled at the time when he got to Guyana about the race issue. It was the first time he traveled out of the U.S., and where he grew up, he didn't have any examples of rich, middle-class black people that he was experiencing in Guyana, and that was the reason for all his questions. So there we are. The book's coming out next year. Thank you.
time comedian skin and all. Look at the bag of fight shell. Looking for your fight to be the banner we go.
Excuse me, may I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? Those are the people who are supposed to be here when my piece was playing. That's the masquerade I'm talking about. Therefore, this piece that I have here, you see this $5 price? It's just gone up. That was the man that was dancing there picking up the money. Here he's got a $1,000 bill, which is about $10 US, right? I want my price. Is that good? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Hello? Hi, we now continue on with our program, and I would like to introduce you to Dr. Vibert Cambridge. Most of us would know him, so I don't have to really go through any long discussions about him. He's written a wonderful book on the music of Guyana, and it's available for sale. And it's one, the history, it tells you everything about the music and musical life in the country. I welcome Dr. Vibert Cambridge to the podium. Thanks.
Music? Ladies and gentlemen, we've just seen and celebrated something that for almost 100 years had been on the margins, had been denigrated.
Into the mic.
Okay, you're hearing now? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, do you hear now? Okay, I'm going to try to do this GBC thing now. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just experienced a genre of Guyanese music, an authentic Guyanese bit of creativity that for many a year, for almost a century, was associated with negative aspects of our society. Earlier this afternoon, Ingrid spoke about Madame Olindi. This is Madame Olindi's family that we have celebrated here this evening. Congratulations to the Guyana Steel Masquerade Band. The other important thing about this band, it is a national band. It is made up of musicians from the East Coast, West Demerara, and Linden. This is probably a new development in Guyanese musical history. And we in GCA are very proud to be playing a part in this rehabilitation and reinvitalization of masquerade in Guyana. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. I want to thank St. John's Episcopal Church, Dr. Juliet Emmanuel, I want to thank those Guyanese in New York and in the United States who, in some form or fashion, contributed to this work. I'd like to identify a few of them. There's Valerie Stevenson. I'm calling her as I know her. Valerie, please acknowledge your presence. There she is. There, Valerie. Yeah, there she is. When I tried to make connections, Valerie was able to provide me with photographs. One of the things we found doing this research is that a lot of materials on Guyana are fugitive. They are gone. You don't know where they are. And thanks to Valerie, I was able to have access to her mother's collection, and her mother's collection is directly related to British Guiana Music Teachers Association's archives and the life's work of the great late Lynette Dolphin. I want to thank Ivor Lynch. I want to thank Jocelyn Small. I also want to thank James Sidney. James Sidney was my boss at GBC, and he had deep insight into broadcasting in Guyana, and he also loaned me a number of books that you cannot find in libraries in the United States, thanks to James Sidney. I'd like to thank Cicely Rodway, who brought me up to speed on the work of Valerie Rodway. I want to thank June Dolphin and Jacqueline DeWeaver. Those two names straddled the entire 20th century of music in Guyana. I also want to thank Stanley Greaves, whose artwork is on the cover. This is called The Last String Band, and it's a homage to his father, who was a member of a Guyanese string band back in the days before jukebox, back in the days before Tom Charles and the Stink Potatoes. I also want to thank Dr. Kimani Nehusi, whose work on Guyanese history provided a valuable context to explore the late 19th century and the early years of the 20th century. There are some other names that I will speak to later on. Music, as Alan Merriman pointed out to us more than 50 years ago, is not a phenomenon of sound alone. Music, what we hear as music, is the end product of a dynamic process, the outcome of many human interactions in the political, economic, social, and technological realms. Musical life in Guyana is guided by that orientation. So I'm not really doing a piece about the hit parade and all of that. I'm talking about the dynamics that conspired to create and give us the music that we consumed, distributed, and celebrated. Although emphasizing the 20th century, this book connects Guyana with its long history, a history that is more than 5,000 years old. Guyana is more than the arrival of Columbus and those of us who came in bondage or who came in indentureship. Current archaeology is showing that there has been settled human habitation in Guyana that is more than 5,000 years old. So we must recognize and celebrate this. This work also pays attention to a dialectic that's called musical encounters, musical interaction, and musical exchange. These concepts are developed by a Trinidadian ethnomusicologist by the name of Tina Ramnarine. This construction is useful for us to look at what has happened to music in Guyana as its various peoples have encountered each other, have interacted with each other, and have created some wonderful, unique manifestations, as you've seen in Masquerade. Some have argued that this interaction, this encountering, this interaction, and this exchange may have taken place even before the Guyana soil, the Guyana space. Some have argued that on the ships that brought our enslaved ancestors to the Caribbean, ships that brought our indentured ancestors to the Caribbean, you've had these moments of encounter. In my book, I refer to the case of indentured workers coming from India, being exposed to the shanties of the European seamen. And as Angel wrote in his book, when they disembarked, they attempted to sing the shanties. When we think about it, that multiple ethnicities from Africa came, and we have created something that we call an African statement in Guyana, that is about encounter, that is about interaction, and that is about exchange. So when last night at the Kwekwe, the family says, nation, how are your nation? Nation, how are you dead? That's asking a very deep question. What's your ethnicity? Are you Yoruba? Are you Congo? Are you Akan? You know, who are you? Are you Igbo? You know, who are you? And then after you explain who you are, they say, well, open the door, let the man come in. All right. There is also a possibility that there was an early encounter between the peoples of our African ancestry and the peoples of our Indian ancestry, because many of the ships that were bringing indentured workers to Guyana stopped in St. Helena's to recall, because by the time we got into indentureship to Guyana, we had a different naval or nautical technology. You were also using steam and coal. So you stopped in St. Helena to recall. And in St. Helena, you had the so-called freed Africans, the Africans who were freed from the illegal slave trade. And in St. Helena, you had Guyanese agents who were encouraging the freed Africans to come to Guyana, come and work in Guyana. So there's a possibility that Jaji Bais may have been African and may have been Indian. So therein lies the possibilities of encounter, interaction, and exchange. This work, Musical Life in Guyana, is complex in that it looks at musical life in the urban aspects of Guyana, in the rural aspects in Guyana, and in the hinterland aspects of Guyana. 3 geographic regions over 3 specific periods. Our period as a colony, which existed, let's use 1838 as a point of departure. Between 1838 and 1953, we were living through a matured colonial period, and that had a certain musical signature. We refer to that as the musical aesthetics of the state. And many of us grew up under the musical aesthetics of the colonial state. Then we had the period of from 53 to 66, that period of the preparation for independence. And you began to see a change in our creativity. You take as a point of departure 1958, the first National History and Culture Week celebrations, which encouraged Guyanese creativity. And the great Guyanese composer Hugh Sam composed a piece called Variations on 3 Guyanese Folk Songs that won first prize. I think it signaled a change of musical aesthetics during this second period in Guyana's history. And the third period we'd like to look at, it's the post-colonial, the post-independence period, which we could break into 2 moments. The moment from 66 to 92, which was dominated by the People's National Congress, and the period from 1992 to the end of the 20th century, to 2015, which was dominated by the People's Progressive Party. This book is organized into 11 chapters, and each chapter pretty much is associated with a particular decade in Guyanese cultural life. During the 1900s to the 1920s, although we were dominated by a colonial system, you had resistance to it. Masquerade, they were called Santa P bands. And Santa P, according to the Guyanese sociologist at York University, the Camera, she says there are 2 ways of reading the term Santa P. Either that the ruling class saw them as vile, dirty, vicious, venomous, and poisonous insects, or it was a statement by the Masquerade Band themselves, kind of bravado. If you all think you're bad, we badder than you. All right. So, you know, the chapters follow. The 1920s, there's the restiveness, there are the strikes, there are the soldiers coming back from World War I, there are politicized. They're speaking for independence. The 1930s, by the end of the 1930s, it's the Second World War, and the Americans have arrived in Guyana. The bases at Temeri or Atkinson Field, and as Godfrey Chin points out in his own inimitable way, by the end of the World War II, you had 84 whorehouses in Guyana, all responding to need. Well, there's a whole notion of the masculinity of the soldiers. This book, and you go through that, the 1950s, it's the preparation for independence. It's the euphoria of 1953 and the depression of 1953. It's the 1960s, the painful road to independence. There is the 70s, when the small man is going to become a real man. There, the 80s, when the economy crashes, HIV becomes evident. And as Bunny Al says, he feels that the creative button was pressed in Guyana. And then there's the 1990s, agitation, change of government. There's and we go through to the 2000s, and we see that the hopes were not necessarily appreciated. So we also look at this by the decade. A key variable in this conversation is that of governance, right? Governance in Guyana. Governance we define as the process of making decisions about the economic, social, and cultural directions of the society, and the processes associated with the allocation of the state's resources to implement those decisions. Big concept, right? It is making decisions about where we're going to go as a society and allocating resources to do this. In the case of Guyana and societies such as Guyana, governance is invariably guided by an overarching ideology or a set of aspirations to which a ruling class and its allies support. The ruling classes will draw upon persuasive techniques, and they will draw upon coercive techniques. The masquerade men and the steel band men will speak to you about the coercive use of force in the society. One steel band man who lives here in New York spoke about, he was from Tripoli Steel Band. He talked about the Tripoli Steel Band being stopped, their steel drums taken away from them, and weeks later he passes in Ivleri and he sees his steel drum as a plant pot. You know, so these are some of the dynamics in this this process of use of persuasive and coercive power. In the Guyana context, ethnopolitics has defined Guyanese political life pretty much since the abolition and emancipation of enslaved people in Guyana. It has been based on a proposition of racial superiority. If you look at it, Portuguese were not considered European. Why? What does that mean? That seems to me to suggest that you have a hierarchy of Europeans. And if you have a hierarchy of Europeans, you had a hierarchy of color in Guyanese society. And we have unfortunately seen this pattern of hierarchy, permutations on racial superiority following our country. We use terms like apanjat and cronyisms to refer to this. So this is the kind of framework within which I explore this phenomenon, this music in Guyanese society. But how did it start? It started when my dear wife, Dr. Pat Cambridge, who was a Philip Pilgrim harp recipient, and at one time was the youngest accompanist for the Woodside Choir, took myself and our children to a surprise birthday party for Billy Pilgrim in 2000 in Century Palm Gardens. Now, my musical life was pretty much done at Queen's College when Leonard Dolphin kicked me out of the choir. Leonard Dolphin said to me, "Cambridge, your voice like a cockroach, leave." So that was it. So I went with my wife to this birthday concert, and you know how it goes at a party, the people say, "Speech, speech." So Billy had to get up and speak. And Billy spoke about his life in music. And he was taking us back to sometime in the 1930s when he became the second Guyanese to win a prestigious award to go and study at the Royal College of Music. Prior to him was his brother, Philip Pilgrim, then Billy Pilgrim or William Pilgrim, and then it was Lynette Dolphin, and then there's a long gap and Rosemary Ramsey Hall, and then another long gap and then Avis Joseph. But as Billy Pilgrim started to speak this story, he began to tell us about all kinds of drama, who would get a royal patronage, who the governor would say you are blessed. He started to tell a different story. So I went back and I sat near to Monsignor, his name slips me at the moment, but he said to me, he says, Vibert, that's just one part of the story. He says, Guyanese have created music in every genre. Say again. Okay, right.
Why don't you hold it?
I'm a lamateur.
You can hold it, it's better.
All right, Pat. I've been helped. So Billy Pilgrim began to tell us this story. So I went and I sat near to the Monsignor, and the Monsignor says to me, but Vibert, Guyanese have created music in every genre. He says, take about Brother Pascal Jordan. I said, yeah, Pascal Jordan. He says, well, he had to change the sound of the Roman Catholic Mass in the Caribbean. He Caribbeanized it. I said, wow, oh my God, I didn't know that. So the next day, drawing up on my old GBC roots, I went over to GBC on High Street and said to Bertie Chancellor, I said, Bertie, what's really going on with Guyanese music? And Bertie decided to give me a dissertation. I'm like, wow, Vivian Lee did this, and this, and the Gong Show, wow. Then Noel Adams joined the conversation. And Noel started to talk another set of story. By the end of that, when we got back to the States, I said, I think we've got something going on here. This book sought to answer the following question. In addition to the overarching goal of understanding the dynamic, in the process of music, we wanted to get an appreciation of the nature of Guyanese musical creativity during the 20th century. We wanted to understand what institutions and organizations influenced this dynamic, what were the various forms of musical interaction in the process, and what were the consequences of these interactions and dynamics. And this is what is in this piece here. Data collection for this work required a bunch of travel, across Europe, as Keimani pointed out. A lot of biased information, nevertheless important, resides in England, and we found in England the composition of the work of the late Clem Nichols. Now, who is Clem Nichols? Clem Nichols was a corporal in the British Guiana Militia Band. He's probably one of Guyana's greatest composers. We probably still celebrate his music. Dear Demerara is one of his compositions. So this is Clem Nichols composing this music in the 1920s for the British Empire exhibition. Like, okay, all right. So I said, okay, so going through those archives. We're now teaching in Germany, Leipzig, Germany, and I've got a conversation going on with one of the professors at the University of Leipzig. And I asked him, I said, you seem to have had a lot of Guyanese who came and studied here. He said, yeah. He said, I said, I'm trying to find out more about Guyana and East Germany. He says, I'll get back to you. About 2 weeks later, there came an envelope from the Leipzig Opera House. In 1966, December, an opera called Sugarcane Johnny had its premiere in Leipzig. And this told the story of a black guy and an Indian woman who fell in love but were betrayed. He was put in jail but came out to great celebration by his people. He was telling the story of 1953.
He was telling the story of 1953. He, as a known communist composer, was in solidarity with the struggle in Guyana. And among the things the Leipzig Opera House provided me was an autograph program by Janet Jagan and a variety of photographs. So when I subsequently interviewed Janet Jagan in Georgetown around 2006 or 2008, she said, sure. When he came, we sent Neville Anniborn was his driver, and they took him all over the country. So when you hear his Quack Quack Concerto, he's got a piece called Quack Quack Concerto, and I'm not going to use the correct technical terms, but he plays that piano, particularly the left hand, as if it's drums, the percussive. So when you listen to this opera that incorporates Guyana's folk style, one is blown away. We interviewed over 200 people, collected over 400 hours of tape, and more than 2,000 units of Guyanese music. What are some of the conclusions? We found that every ethnic group in Guyana has contributed to the Guyana's musical space. We look at our Amerindian heritage. There are things that we do, the maracas, there are functions of music, cleansing. The late Desiree Fox was very influential in giving me advice on this. For example, she spoke about our indigenous people making rattles from beetle casings, the big beetles. If you hit those cases together, you have a certain song. So our Amerindian ancestors and our indigenous peoples will vary the size of beetle cases to vary the sound of their rattles. It's like the gungrus, which we find in our Indian heritage. Sugarcane workers at the end of the sugar season would make gungrus out of soft drink caps. And they would use their saucepans as tablas, and their files and their cutlasses as dantal. So you've got a lot of creativity going on there. We've got influences from a West and Central African tradition. And one element we've got from a West and Central African tradition are songs of praise and blame, right? Praise and blame. So every political era has had a problem with calypsonians in Guyana. The mighty, what's his name? The mighty rebel. The mighty rebel is known as PS, Prominent Second. For a long while, he never won a calypso competition because he invariably stepped on the toes of the political ruling class. Our European ancestors have left much. Sometimes we say, well, there are Europeans and Portuguese. Portuguese were very responsible for the diffusion of jazz in Guyanese society. A majority of our Portuguese ancestors came out from Madeira, and that was a little bit more of a folksy thing. So Main Street Church had a different sound than Breakdown. From India, we've got a range of traditions, including a unique Guyanese innovation called Tan singing, and one of the exponents of that is a man called Tilak. We've got African American presence in Guyanese society. We've got Latin American presence in Guyana. We've got Caribbean presence in Guyana. We've got influence from the diaspora. Here are some names. Alice Fraser Denny, Ken Snake Hips Johnson, Ingram Fox, Charles Ingram Fox, Manhattan, composer of operas in this town. Ronnie Sweetlips Hart. Ronnie Sweetlips Hart is from Hope Town. He's known that he had the most wonderful lips on the trumpet. Went to England and gave Lord Kitchener his first job in England. We got Bing Sarung and the Ramblers, the longest living performing Guyanese string band in Canada. Aubrey Cummings, Dave Martins, Terry Gadraj, Ray Luck, Hugh Somm, Loris Holland, they all live here in the diaspora. What are some of the conclusions? Technology, starting with radio, played an important role in the distribution of Guyana's musical tastes and aesthetics. Also the the audio cassette launched the years of piracy that we still live today. But Guyana has been an open society. Across the 20th century, Guyana has had to deal with a number of standard problems. Food, feeding yourself, keeping out the water, providing transportation, proper health, access to quality education. And each government has drawn upon the musical assets of the society to help them with that particular task. I like my local dish. What was he talking about? All right, that's it. And right now we are all celebrating Vivian Lee's If Wishes Were Horses, right? It's doing the rounds on Facebook. One could say that Vivian Lee was really doing a piece of propaganda there, because what he's promoting was cooperatives, right? So, you know, the challenges of the state have influenced music. For example, the Mashramani Calypsonians, you better be in the good books of whoever runs Mashramani, and, you know, if you want to get through. We have been a society that paid a lot of emphasis to singing. A majority of Guyanese musical compositions are songs. Instrumental music in Guyana has been primarily piano. Music has also played a role in foreign relations. Think about the audacity of the Chronicle Atlantic Symphony Steel Band going to Moscow to play Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture. You know, you gotta have chutzpah, you know, to go and do that. There's some current challenges. We are shrinking, our instrumental diversity is shrinking. If you look at the instruments that came in with our founding peoples, you look at the Indian music today in Guyana, it is primarily a dantal, dolak, harmonium musical tradition. The esraj, the sitar, and those kinds of things are not present. Currently in Guyana, I think you have one violin teacher. So we have some challenges there. But for this presentation, which I would like to wind up quickly, I would like to say a little bit about the women who have influenced Guyanese musical life. And permit me to read a little bit about that. The first person I will read about is Lynette Dolphin. Not because she put me out of the choir. I don't hold that against her. What that did, it was caused me not to be able to wear my long pants. 83. Okay. In early December 1939, 4 months after the start of World War II, Pilgrim returned to British Guyana. Lynette Dolphin is bombed during the Second World War and returns to Guyana. And one of the things she does when she returns to Guyana is to create the British Guiana Music Teachers Association, and after that, then the school's music festival, which subsequently grew to become the National Music Festival. Dorothy Tate is another name I would like us to reflect on. Dorothy Tate, she was a leader of the British Guiana Philharmonic Society. Her home, the Woodbine House, was a nursing ground for musical talent in Guyana. So when the music festival was launched in 1953, everyone assumed that Demerara, led by Dorothy Tate, would clean the society up. However, that was not to be so. That was not to be so at all. Because coming out of the ancient county, led by a woman called Ruby McGregor, came a force. So they went and they conquered. Here is what happened when they returned home. The Berbice contingent returned to New Amsterdam as conquering heroes and were celebrated for surpassing the most optimistic expectations. At a public function, W.O.R. Kendall gave Ruby McGregor an illuminated address. And this is what it read in part. Never in the history of the ancient county have such feats been accomplished in realms of song and music, and never was there a more energetic, assiduous, helpful, and successful teacher of music than yourself. Your name will go down in posterity as one who in your day and generation had done great service to your community and mankind, a service which generations yet unborn will appreciate and strive to emulate. Power to Berbice. Now, Berbice and Georgetown, Demerara always had challenges, even in popular music. Then there was Helen Tate. Helen Tate was very has to be recognized for her work in musical theater. Amelie Vaca and The Future is Bright. The Future is Bright could be read as a very unashamed propaganda piece. The hero and the heroine, his name was Guy and her name was Anna. Right, so Guyana, they were anticipating this Guyana that would come after independence. That's Helen Tate. And then there is Valerie Rodway. Guyanese artists have anticipated, chronicled, and nurtured our collective